I like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. It's Netflix time. This movie's called Operation Finale. In 1960, Israel spies undertake a daring mission to capture notorious Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann and bring him to justice, based on real events. So it's a real life drama. The movie came out 2018. It's about 2 hours long. Spoiler alert to the max. Let's get it. They show us this lady right off the bat, but we don't really know who she is. But I'm guessing she's somehow related to this guy, Peter. Peter has this mission where he's tracking down a certain Nazi, but the wife gives him information, making him realize he got the wrong guy. But his man's like, fuck all that shit, he's still a Nazi. He's like, I bet he's on somebody's list. So then we cut to a guy gathering some businessmen for a meeting, and then we get flashbacks of Jews standing in a hole. And what happened to them was pretty much not good. The guy speaking to him, his name is Roger Clement. Now, why is he important? Stick with me for this one. So we fast forward to people in the movie theater, a random scene, right? This guy laughing with his friends, his name is Claus. The girl that keeps looking back at him like she wants to say what's up, her name is Sylvia. They start talking and he wants to meet her family. Claus, Sylvia, and her father are all eating at the table and gathered around, and her father is blind. They never really explained how he lost his sight. So anyway, while they're conversating, we find out that Claus is German. But unbeknownst to him and her recently, she found out 2 weeks ago she is a Jew. Now why is that important? You'll see. Back in Jerusalem at this police station, this guy gives him a tidbit about this guy named Adolf Eichmann. Now, if you don't know who Adolf Eichmann is, allow me to explain. He was a German-Austrian general who, before World War II, who participated in executing almost 6 million Jews, which they like to call the final solution. We know it today as the Holocaust. People named Adolf are fucked up. Adolf Eichmann, Adolf Hitler, it's ridiculous. So anyway, the chief is like, man, why do I want to dig up past shit? His right-hand man convinces him. But obviously they're going to need help. They acquire help from this guy and Peter. Peter has this one painting on the wall. It's a painting of the woods, which is very symbolic to this flashback he gets with his lady and 3 kids. Now, we're still not sure who that is to Peter yet, but I'm pretty sure it's somebody important. Meanwhile, we go back to Claude and Sylvia. Claude takes Sylvia to this meeting, but Sylvia has to tell him something. Obviously to tell him that she's a Jew. But she never gets the chance to, and now she's in a room with a bunch of Germans, where this guy's giving a bunch of Jew hate speech. You can tell in Sylvia's face she ends up getting pissed off, and then she storms out. Claude doesn't even realize she's gone. As a matter of fact, he's chanting with the rest of his patrons. And we go to a scene where Peter's eating soup with his mom. He gets a call from the office. They bring him under the fact that they know where Adolf Eichmann is, and they're planning a way to try to capture him and bring him to Jerusalem. Or at least they have the good idea that they know where he is. So he's getting his team together. He's got to get his ex-girlfriend, who was still shooken up about an incident that happened to her before. But then he reassures her that won't happen again, you know what I'm saying? And he convinces her. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Meanwhile, you got agents in the car with Sylvia, who are having her drop off a package to Robert Clement's house. His wife answers the door, offers tea, and then Roger Clemens himself shows up. Now, Roger Clemens also has a son of his own. Alright, so here's the kicker, right? Claus shows up on the property, probably to find Sylvia. He busts through the door talking about some, come on Sylvia, you're leaving. Roger puts him up against the wall and tells him to behave, and Claus is like, yeah, I'm sorry, Dad. Wait a minute, Dad? What the fuck? Sylvia finally meets Claus' parents, but really is under the identity of the undercover to find Adolf Eichmann. After detectives do a thorough investigation, we find out that Claus' last name is Eichmann, so Robert Clement is actually Adolf Eichmann. Holy shit. Well, anyway, Claus chases after Sylvia. Sylvia tells Claus that he's actually a Jew. He doesn't know what to think. He's sitting there looking dumbfounded. Back at the station, the whole team has confirmed that Robert Clement is actually Adolf Eichmann, and they're trying to come up with a plan to capture him and get him to Jerusalem for a quote-unquote fair trial. After all that, they go for drinks. The Prime Minister shows up and gives them a speech about succeeding and failing, which basically motivates the crew to catch this motherfucker. They all arrive in South America. They got their place set up, and now it's down to business. We found out the person who was starting a rally earlier was a guy named Faulkner. He's an SS ranking official. He stands right alongside Adolf. You mostly see him with Claus throughout the entire picture. So Peter's over there scoping out Adolf's lodgings. And, he's basically checking out his daily schedule. What times he goes to work, what times he comes back and forth in and out from the bus. Because, hey, when you've done the things you've done, you want to change your life. You want to live as simple as possible, right? So now they're finally getting their plan together. They pay certain people to fix up the house that they're in. Pay attention to this chick. She will come up later. Peter once again scoping out the scene and seeing the trains. And sees Adolf and finds out that he's got a son. I really can't even imagine what's going through his head right now. Gets in the car, talks out how he's feeling with Brent. They call her Brent, but I think her name was Brenda. And now they setting off. They finally ready to get this motherfucker. Okay, now this part kind of perplexed me for some reason. Now you see Roger Clemens, a.k.a. Adolf Eichmann right now. Now you see how the birds are moving around? This was so weird to me because I've never seen birds move like this before. It's just weird. I've always seen all types of birds fly north or fly south or fly in circles. I don't know if they were doing that for symbolism because it looks like they were trying to make a swastika in midair. I'm like, the fuck? It just blew my mind for a minute. It was crazy. So it's nighttime, they're trying to put the plan in action. So they basically act like the car needs towing, wait for him to get off the bus, kidnap him, get him in the car, sedate him, and drive off. But then they see this guy on a bicycle ride by. He's never seen anybody on a bike ride by the whole time they've been scouting, so obviously he's getting paranoid. Peter reassures everybody it's all good and gravy. The first bus comes by, and nobody gets off of it. So now everybody's really getting paranoid and freaking out. They're thinking like, nah, somebody knows. But before they get discouraged, a second bus comes. Yeah. And there he is. Peter just says, fuck the car situation, I'm just gonna go to grab him. Peter grabs him, they sedate him, they got him in the car. A couple hours later, Claus gets home, wondering where his dad's at. He finds his dad's glasses in the lawn. So you know he's thinking to himself, something's up. They take Roger to their disclosed location, and after some thorough interrogation, he admits that he is Adolf Eichmann. Klaus Faulkner and his crew get together. They realize that his father's missing. Now, from this point on, the crew is trying to get Adolf Eichmann to sign this treaty for a fair trial, because without it, they can't take him back to Jerusalem. He would have to stay in South America. But now that Klaus knows that he's missing, they be able to shut down all air traffic control. So no planes leaving South America for another 10 days. So they're pretty much going to be stuck with Adolf for like a week and a half. So for most of the time, they're trying to get him to sign these papers. But just Adolf being there brings up restless, dark memories. And most of the crew wants to kill this motherfucker, including Peter. There's one scene where even Peter is about to choke this nigga in his sleep, but thinks better of it because obviously this trial is more important than just him. I mean, come on, we're talking about a guy that helped massacre 6 million Jews. Like, it's crazy. And it's basically ongoing like that with the crew. Adolf starts bringing up his past stories, which more than likely just pisses them off more than anything. This chick gets her wages for working, she's about to go to the store eventually. But like I said, she becomes important a little bit later on. Peter spends most of his time with Adolf, feeding him, doing all this other stuff, trying to keep him comfortable. But really, he's just trying to get him to sign them damn papers. Klaus and Faulkner are still searching, but their trail's gone a little bit short so far. I'm gonna skip a little bit ahead real quick. There's the one person in the crew that's really adamant about torturing Adolf. And there's a scene where bikers are riding up and down the street, but it happens to be Klaus and his boys. They're checking the outside of houses, so they're basically trying to hide him and hide everybody else. And Adolf happens to be hiding in the closet with the angriest person in the entire crew. So while they're hiding in the closet, he takes his chance to almost try to kill him right then and there. But then Peter comes in just in time to break it up. Alright, so here's where things start to turn a little bit. After saving Adolf's life, him and Peter get to talking. Peter shows him a picture of this lady named Fuma. Fuma is the lady we saw in the woods with the 3 kids that they kept showing us throughout the film. Fuma is actually his sister. All those kids were killed and she was hung to death. And Adolf led the coalition of that. So after convincing Adolf he will see his wife again before he dies, he finally signs the papers. Of course, everybody else is downstairs waiting, anxious to see if it got done. Him and Brenda share a moment, somewhat. Now, step 2 was getting him out of South America, my bad. The Fuhrer starts having flashbacks about how he lined up about 5,000 people in a pit to be shot, all Jews. I'm not going to show the graphic nature because that's just too much. Alright, so remember the girl earlier that was getting her wages? Apparently, somebody found out about her, she got caught and started getting interrogated. Somebody was stalking her. They kidnapped her and put a swastika on her throat. God damn. So they're basically torturing her, trying to figure out where Klaus's father is. Klaus comes in all nice and gentle, like trying to act like he's her friend and shit. And of course, she tells him their location. So they're hot on their trail now. Meanwhile, Brenda's ready to give Adolf the anesthesia, and he starts riling up Peter on a story about Fuma. About her being shot in the pit with the rest of her kids. Which he's not even sure is true or not, but it definitely gets under his skin. So at this point, he wants to rip his fucking head off. But they gotta stick to the mission at hand. They try to make their exit. Claude and the boys show up, so they gotta go out the back. They get away in an escape car. Claus and them bust in, but obviously it's too late. They get through airport security, but this guy gets a notice. So as our crew is scrambling to get Adolf on the plane, air traffic has to view landing coordinates before any plane can take off. He comes in there and unknowingly steals the coordinates. Peter decides to go himself and give the plane sets of coordinates to the air traffic controlman. But while he's doing that, the boy's about to show up at the airport. Peter gets under the controls, but there's no way he can get back to the airport in time before the Claus and the boys show up. And because the mission is more important than him, he tells them to let the plane take off. The plane takes off and he's stuck in South America. Who knows how long he's there for. And in case you were worried about it, they were able to save Sylvia and her dad too. A year later, Peter did keep his promise to Adolf and allowed him to see his wife one more time. Now, Peter got back home. They never explained how long it took him to get back. Now, why am I bringing up the time frame? Because when he goes to the trial, which is a huge turnout, by the way, he sits down and he sees Brenda with somebody else looking at least about 4 to 6 months pregnant. Matter of fact, it's got to be longer than that because the trial took place in 1961. When they kidnapped Adolf, it was May of 1960. That's got to be at least like 8 months, right? Well, anyway, they got Adolf, they got him done. So he turns around, the last thing he sees is visions of his sister, Fuma, walking off in the forest with her 3 kids. Yeah, it's freaking crazy, man. So the aftermath of all this. On June 1st, 1962, Adolf Eichmann was hanged, having been found guilty of transporting millions of people to their deaths. And as he predicted, he was cremated in the oven built for the occasion, and his ashes spread in the sea so that he might have no final place to rest. The trial was actually televised globally. This was the first time eyewitness testimony of the Holocaust was seen, like ever. The real Peter Markland ended up dying in 2005. Gotta keep in mind, this is the 1960s. And that's Operation Finale. Whew. Operation Finale on Netflix. Check it out. Like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know it's your boy Slick DZ, all the easy mister. Big, goddamn slogan.